What's up, humanity? I'm Spacebug. This is Magic for the Masses, and today I'm here with Alexei Novitzky. Did I say that right?
That's correct.
And I'm going to describe him as a man who is teaching the world that magic is real with science, and I'll let you describe yourself as well.
I'm just a human.
I don't know if I agree with that statement, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, I guess just to talk about my work. Recently I've released a few books that take us from modern accepted physics to understanding the primary vortex of creation. Easiest way to put it.
Excellent. Now, what is the primary vortex of creation?
You could say, well, I mean, that's where it's the fingerprint that's left over in every single aspect of the physical realm. Because that's all we really have, right? Is when it comes to science, is being able to touch and see the physical. And you could say that the link between all physical creations is the Fibonacci spiral at the end of the day.
Okay, that's awesome. And now, have you heard of I think it's the law of one in today's like New Age world? Same concept, basically, or not at all?
Honestly, I haven't listened to much of it. I know a little bit about the law of one, but not too much.
Basically, everything comes from the same spot, and we're all part of it. I guess.
Yeah,
one way to put it.
I see it as a primary vortex. So there's like one big vortex that exists, and within the vortex, there's relationships. Like this part of the vortex compared to this part of the vortex. Now this has an experience of that, but all of it's being shown in a relative fashion. So in a way, the same field of energy will look completely different to someone else.
Now, why?
Because of
experiences in this life.
well, it has to do with perception. In a physics point of view, you could say it has to do with inertial reference frame. So we're all in a different position.
That makes sense perfectly.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I think that we're at a point where most of humanity will be able to change the reference point.
I think so. Well, I think right now we're in a shift, you could say, from living in a very physical realm to understanding that there exists more outside our perception. Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're hoping the world will be learning.
So I mean, that's
go ahead.
I was going to say that's the first thing I do in the books is basically talk about the human senses and how they've all evolved from certain rotations within space-time itself. So we get like sound, touch, taste, and smell from revolving. All the fluid, all that energy orbiting the center of the Earth creates those senses. Then we get the sense of vision from orbiting around the sun and that field of energy. And then we get the sense of time from our position within the greatest structure of infinity. Yeah.
It's then infinity. How would you describe that?
And from the smallest to the biggest.
Excellent.
Yeah.
When did you? Okay, do you consider yourself, or do you consider yourself spiritually aware?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that term's not offensive to you. When did you become spiritually aware?
When I was probably like 4 or 5 years old.
I would love to hear that story.
Well, I guess the first time I ever noticed it was anything different was when I basically woke up from a dream and I said to my brother, I know how to ride a bicycle now. And before I couldn't, you know? And so basically he was like, show me kind of thing, prove it to me. And so he took the training wheels off my bicycle and I just hopped on it and right then and there just like jumped on it and started riding it.
So what's the dream about? Riding the bike?
Yep. In the dream, I was riding my brother's bicycle and I was able to do it like successfully, no problem. I could feel every aspect of it, the balance, the motions, you push with this foot, you push with that foot. And then I woke up with that same feeling in my body. So I just brought it straight into the physical, you know, from a dream.
Correlate that to being spiritually aware. Like, how do you put that with the spirit world or whatever?
Well, the spirit world, you could say, is the pre-manifest or the non-manifest realms outside of our perception. And so when it comes to the most basic way to explain it, you could say that dream state is the closest realm to our awake state. But you also have realms that are greater than that, that go into your different lives, past and future lives. So you could say that dream state is closer to the past lives, and that DMT, or like 80 hertz in the brain, fast gamma state, is closer to the future states.
That's an excellent thing to know, that you can correlate that to science, I guess, in a way. And I'm very interested to learn more about that eventually. Did you have any experiences with anything that's physically from not from this earth? Or do you not believe that there's a physically not from this earth? Do you think it's just like energetic differences or vibrational differences?
I guess relative to our bodies, yes, there's stuff that doesn't exist, but all physical is relative.
Can you
Did
hear
your
me?
screen just turn all white? Like,
Hear me or not at all?
I can hear you. Yep.
The screen's fine. It'll be fine. Sorry,
Okay.
if you don't mind starting over, whatever. We're saying.
No, it's okay. You were saying, is there anything outside the physical? In my opinion, definitely. Yeah. And but all physical creation is somewhat relative to the experience. So I would say that all spirits have a relative body at the end of the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I would just love to hear you talk more about any of that. Any of the stuff with the spirits, how you perceive it in this light of a scientific minded person. Anything that's not in the physical world that the normal people would say that they perceive, I would like to know how you've learned to perceive it. Anything. Like, it's just very intriguing to me that I want people to be able to hear your message and to know that these things can be translated in human terms. I don't really speak human.
I think an easy way to do it is to consider the concept of your line of sight. And what that is, how far you can see into time. With like your vision though, like we all can see. What I'm trying to say is, what's your line of sight? If you suffer a drug addiction, your line of sight might be like 20 minutes to a day. I'm going to do this today. I'm going to do this. I'm going to keep doing this, and that's going to be my whole day. But if you have a line of sight that extends from, say, from when you're 5 years old all the way to when you're 55 years old, you could say that your line of sight's a little bit bigger. And so that has a lot to do with what kind of, I always go back to those vortices, what size of a spiral you actually exist within. Because you could say that there's the greatest laminar flow of your creation, which basically is being in tune with the primal spirit that flows inward. But every time you get sucked into a delusion, it takes you off center. And so now, instead of having this huge line of sight, you've now shrunken down and you have this tiny little one. And hopefully I'm explaining that somewhat properly.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, I think.
Yeah, I mean, each one of those delusions could be like a thought. Like, say you're sitting home. Well, even just like a marketed thought. So like you're at home, you're sitting still, you're perfectly fine. Life is great the way it is, and you're perfectly in tune with nature. But then all of a sudden, you see on the TV or through social media, hey, there's this new wristwatch, or there's this new fancy car, or there's this new toy. And so now like your line of sight has now shifted from being in tune with reality to now I need to go get this toy. And so that really does like funnel you down into a really small perspective of reality. And that same concept applies to everything that we do in life. So that could even be going to school for 4 years, or going to, getting a job somewhere, or doing something of that nature. And so each one of those somewhat solidifies your line of sight when you get stuck in
limiting in a way.
I mean, you get solidified into a fractal of human creation, and then now that's what you do. Instead of being connected to it all,
Makes sense.
Yep.
Let's see. I didn't prepare questions because I figured that I never actually asked the questions I prepare. So what do you do? You do something with skateboards, it looks like, right? Something along those lines.
I've done a lot of different things, but all in an effort to ultimately spread a message.
Right. What's that message, I guess, be the most important question.
To be well balanced in mind, body, spirit. So teaching people awareness of their postures that they hold in all aspects. I mean, people are really familiar with postures in yoga, or like physical postures, like stand on one foot, reach towards the sky. But you can also take a posture in mind, and you can also take postures in spirit. Yeah. And so an example of taking a posture in mind would just be to say all Democrats are the best, or all Republicans are the best, right? So now you've jumped into this spiral to where you're just literally believing what other people are saying, and you've categorized people into things, and now all of a sudden those people are these things, and it's like that's going to create friction at every boundary. So that would be an example of taking a posture in mind, but you can also take postures in spirit. And what I mean by that is like not going with the flow, or going with the flow in a way. It's like how fluid you can actually be. And that's something you can practice doing. I mean, if I wanted to, I could just not do anything ever and be a big, like a Grinch. But you can also like choose to love life and be happy, right? So that's the ability to take posture in spirit, and to be able to connect to different flows. It has a lot to do with that too. And so that'd be the ability to take posture in all three: mind, body, spirit. But with the skateboards, what I was doing was I turned it into a car. It's the only skateboard in the world with built-in storage.
Cool.
Yeah, I have one right here I can show off so you can see what I'm talking about.
I'll make sure to link in the video to everything that you've got going.
Well, because you also mentioned in the natal chart when you were doing that reading, how you thought I worked with kids or something of that nature. And so you could say when I first started doing all this work, I was an after-school martial arts instructor. And so I was picking up
12th house.
So yeah, I was picking up kids from the local martial arts academy and like, taking them back to the Taekwondo studio. We would help the homework and do all that, and then we would teach them Taekwondo.
Outstanding.
But at the same time, so I invented the skateboard as a student at USF just for fun because I needed to get from class to class. But my professor said you need to patent that right now because it ended up being the only skateboard in the world you can open. Because I put my books inside my skateboard and then I would skate from class to class. And so I ended up patenting that. And then basically ended up getting invited to give lectures at the Smithsonian Institute a couple times in DC.
Sweet.
And yeah, so I was going on all these like innovation adventures. And so I decided to make an innovation adventure cartoon in a way. So I turned my skateboard into a cartoon character. His name is Ollie the SkateCase.
Love it.
I'll show you this first. So this is a rubber Ollie.
Adorable.
Yeah, so that's my skateboard turned into a cartoon character. Right? And so from that though, I was able to make because I have the skateboard. So I made what I call Ollie World skateboard game.
Okay.
Where you go from island to island and you end up on the moon, and there's wormholes and black holes that will, take you through time and stuff. You spin the wheels, the dice, all the game pieces fit inside the board.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yes, all the game pieces would go inside. And, you got that. And then there's also the electric model that I do. And then, so that was, I handmade the originals, but that's an injection mold. And they come in different colors. And I'm now working on the chessboard version of it.
That's genius.
where the graphic is the chessboard, inside it comes with all the pieces. So different board games. And the idea there too is that the cartoon series itself, because it's an online cartoon series, actually talks about extraterrestrials. It talks about like just loving life, recycling. So different ways to actually spread a message
that are healthy.
Yeah, you get what I'm saying. It's a way to spread a message to the youth because right now they're all like attached to they're attached to media.
Right.
In general. So like,
and what is media even? We don't know, but
you get I mean like Fortnite, video games.
Yeah,
so
I know what you mean.
I made a couple video games too that have Ollie as like the main character. Basically took that skateboard character concept and put it into every single aspect of what you see in modern society right now, right? Like video games, cartoons, coloring books. Just so that's the whole SkateCase side of things.
And the wormholes and the black holes kind of might let the kids think a little differently about the world they live in.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, the fact that they just took a wormhole to the moon or actually accidentally got sucked into a black hole that brought them back down to Earth.
That's so cool. Like totally cool. I love that. Anytime you can like, I guess the posture I try to take with my mind is to not have one. You gotta like let everything come in, because if you don't, then you're gonna miss something. And letting people, open up their perceptions a little bit is better than nothing. Encouraging the ability to let things in is important.
And that's the thing too, is you can't really, I mean, to take that objective posture, I think is probably one of the healthiest. But at the same time, be aware, right? Is it like, when you have that objective posture, you can like analyze yourself. Was that good for me or is it bad for me? Right. So I think that's great. But yeah, so I mean, it's a way to, in a way, speak the language of modern society, right? So that like that's what they do. You need to speak their language. So let's introduce these concepts through the language they speak.
Absolutely. That's what I feel like that's why you're so significant to me. I see you doing this, introducing these concepts that I think are like primordial as truth to the world in a way that they can digest it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've all come through very powerful visions and meditations. And I do have my background. My undergraduate degrees are in astrophysics, physics, planetary science, and astronomy.
That's amazing.
And then, thank you. And then I went and got a master's in mechanical engineering. So the idea is to be able to build technologies that can actually work with this, right? So, because how can you ever prove this unless you build a technology that proves it?
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay, so then I feel like that does reference back to your 11th house in your natal chart completely.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Okay.
I mean, you said you mentioned that maybe I'm a master cosmologist. No, I am not.
Okay, fair enough. Well,
yeah.
You have the building blocks for it, though. If you just learn a couple of archetypes, you'd be amazing then.
I'm aware of it, but so this is where I had my bias growing up too. Like I did grow up very spiritual, but at the same time, I was also very scientific. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was like, I would take offense at first when I was in college. People would say, "Oh, you're studying astrology," and I was like, "No, this is astronomy. It's different."
Yeah, there's a huge difference, yeah.
But since I graduated and I started doing all my work, literally my last book is called Spirit, the Vortex of Creation, where I have all the ages of the zodiac on a wheel.
I just watched part of that video, or like most of that video, and it was pretty amazing. So,
Well,
and
that's sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say that all speaks on that primary vortex, because at the end of the day, it controls everything from the hydrogen atom to the human heartbeat to the circadian rhythm to the precession of the Earth itself, right? And how different conscious experiences get injected into the bodies that live on the Earth. Yeah.
When you were talking about the spheres with certain colors and then the signs that they correlate to, there was one missing, right? As far as this chakra system, the crown, I would assume. Did you see that? Yes. Okay.
That's all done on purpose. And
right.
I
figured that it was. That's why I wanted to ask you about it.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that it's done. That I was trying to leave anything out or anything like that. It's more.
Well, I mean, it's possibility. The crown chakra should be your connection to the universe, which is not pinnable. You can't restrict that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I should have had at least 2 more. I had 4 spheres. I think to be more realistic, there should be 6 to 7, and I think that they should all be drifting inwards because I have them doing perfect circles just to make it really simple. They're doing perfect circles.
Nothing really orbits perfectly, though, does it?
No, it doesn't. And if it's spiraling inwards towards the center of a giant vortex, then it's actually going to be spiraling inward as it does the circle. So you'd have, let's just say we're looking at that red circle. It should be more like that, like a little offset. And then as it comes to this top point again, you would shift back up. So it's like we're constantly shifting through these different spiraling flows of energy.
And those basically form our real world and our spiritual and mental worlds, right?
Yes. Yeah, all of them. Each one is somewhat of a layer, but we're a creation of all the layers.
Right. Well, there's some theory somewhere about like all space existing in the same spot, same time. Basically, you're everywhere if you want to be. Every time I say something weird, my screen blinks out. So in this role-playing game that I was telling you about, Mage the Ascension is what it's called. It's out of print. It's White Wolf Publishing, but they have 9 spheres of magic, and the spheres influence different parts of creation. It's just very interesting the way that you have spoken about what I've heard you speak about and how maybe it could correlate to these things, but they have a different system, of course. It just really reminded me that people are out there using magic every day. And I don't know if you consider what you do magic because it's scientifically based, but any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. We just haven't proven with the math these things are possible. Or if we were, are you familiar with the idea that we've kind of been trained out of using magic, either because we're not in life or death situations, or because there's always a possibility of control system?
What do you mean by familiar with that? Like,
have you heard that? I guess I'm not sure if it's Jacques Vallée who did it or something. I was talking to Damien about it at some point.
Yeah, and that's where I've thought about that a little bit. I guess I don't think it was ever really meant to be malicious. I think it was more an attempt to have like leisure time, because a lot of our technologies and infrastructures were originally designed to create leisure time. But at the end of the day, they end up controlling our lives. And so now we've kind of jumped past the boundary, you could say, of just creating leisure time to now having control infrastructures.
Well, wouldn't you say like the witch hunts were kind of a way to prevent free thinking? But I'm also a conspiracy theorist, so.
Well, I mean, that's definitely a way to prevent free thinking if you're going around like.
Literally.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a significant part of our awareness of these different worlds that's been restricted, but we have the ability to break through that restriction if we are willing to. I think people would rather be safe than know the truth.
Well, I think that control comes down to the higher ups too. If they want to control a narrative of some sort or have everyone believe a certain thing, like for example, when Galileo first said that the moons of Jupiter orbit Jupiter, he was told he was locked in jail and forced to read the Bible.
Right.
And so I think it should, I don't know why 100%, but I think it has a lot to do with just fear at the end of the day, because people don't want their visions of reality to be shattered, right? So when some of the things I say to people, they get uncomfortable, even though there's nothing malicious or anything like that, they just get uncomfortable because it's breaking what they think reality is. Yeah, it breaks their reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like it'd be better to live in the true world anyway, no matter what. But I do also believe the truth is relative to, everyone's current opinion of it in a way.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Well, I mean, I guess more what I'm getting at is there's truth, but then you get caught up in fractals of human delusion, right? So when I say, well, they're just, the people in another country aren't any different than you, they just were born in a different country. They still have the same struggles and they still have to deal with the things that they have to deal with. That right there alone is like, no, they're this. People get offended by that. Or when you can say, if you, for
It's still
example,
the same root chakra needs, like survival, food, water, shelter.
100%, we're all humans on Earth. At
We
the
all
end
have
of the
different, I think maybe it's our perception of ourself that changes culturally. That makes maybe for breaking of union, but
well, at the end of the, yeah, and so that all translates back into ego, right? How you identify yourself.
right.
Yeah, and so like if you identify yourself as a certain something, and like they're supposed to not like another group, well, then you're not supposed to like another group.
So limiting though. What's the point in that?
Definitely doesn't create world peace. I know that.
That's true. How are we going to create world peace?
By teaching people of those delusions and the spirals. Yeah.
Very good point.
I've been trying to figure that out. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like this is the type of information that needs to be spread across the world in order for there to ever have a chance of being world peace.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
1984 was a good year. They made a lot of good ones in that year. Specifically, at the end of 1984, and there were no planets retrograde for like 2 months or something, which is pretty rare. At the beginning of 1984, there was like 7 planets retrograde, which is more rare. So it's like the most rare. I don't know. I feel like we come into this life with a plan, or like the contract theory, like you pick what you're going to do before you're born. That's maybe a little over the metaphysical edge, but I think maybe we do have a reason for coming in here. Have you heard of the star seed concept? I'm sure you have.
I've heard of star seeds before. I've been called the star seed. Like
I was
100
going to say, I'm sure that definitely you register on that list. But
I talk about them a little bit in one of my books.
okay.
How star seeds are used to recrystallize human consciousness. I don't call them star seeds. I just call them seeds.
Oh.
And I
Oh yeah, that's okay. Yep. I think
yeah, or seed crystals is what I say.
Yep.
Yeah, because that translates back into physics where they make silicone wafers. Like because you start off by like melting a vat of material, and then you drop in a perfect seed from the top, and then you raise that seed, and all the material sticks to it, and it recrystallizes with the structure of the new seed.
Like rock candy?
Yeah, you can do it with rock candy. You can do it with anything that crystallizes. So like rock candy, silicone, copper, whatever.
But do we really want to crystallize the consciousness, or do we want to leave it fluid?
Well, so that there's a crystal is fluid to begin with, but like when you have a crystalline structure, that's one big grain. Now we've all like connected to that same field, but every single grain could be, you could say, its own little household or individual way to see. Like I talk about what crystals of conscious co-creation, and basically you could consider each family their own grain within time. And so when it comes to recrystallization of all of human consciousness, that's where it comes down to every crystallization, but crystals are still fluid, right? There's atoms flowing through them. They're still being,
yeah, everything is essentially vibrating.
yeah, that's what I was getting at. It's like it's still a fluid, but it's in a harmonious resonance. Like it's a very crystalline structure. I don't hopefully that makes sense.
I mean, I get it. I get that.
Yeah.
So let's see. What have you experienced in life that you question about magic or about the structure of the universe, if there's anything left? I know I believe that we should never make up our mind completely. Like the only thing we know for sure is we know nothing for sure. So what are you not sure of? What are your not for sure's?
I don't know.
That's really
what
good, but it's also dangerous.
I would say that's what I'm not sure of, is not sure of anything. No, I don't know.
That's fair. That's fair. As long as you're willing to take things in from the universe around you, then you should be safe.
Yeah, well, I've always just seen it as like if you walk your line, you're good. Just walk the line that is truly you, and
absolutely
the universe will somewhat crystallize around that.
I feel like wherever we go, our vibration changes everything around us, because of course it's still bouncing off other molecules or atoms or whatever. And I think your vibration is going to definitely change people around you, and hopefully in the greater world. I mean, we all have the potential to, but you have to radiate something that's genuine and valuable if you're going to make a difference.
Well, I talk a lot about a concept called the golden spot, and that's when you are perfectly centered in mind, body, and spirit. And I think an easy way to relate that in the physical is to always go back to martial arts. Like if you have a good stance, good rooting, good posture, you can throw a strong kick or punch. But say you step on a plastic toy and you're hopping in pain, it's going to be really hard to like make a good kick or punch.
Unless you have
And
a
so,
lot of discipline.
right. So like the things you do just won't last in time. And so that it's true with any creation. Like if you're going to, in my opinion, if you're going to like create something, always start from that 0 point, because then that creation will stay lasting for the rest of your life. But another thing to note is if you're creating from that 0 point, and then you need to be well aware of your own doubts, because those will also be manifested. So before you truly start to like create, remove the doubts. In my, just what I like to do, remove all the doubts, connect to that greatest vortex of creation. Now anything you make will last forever.
I
Yeah.
studied kendo, so the 4 poisons of kendo are surprise, fear, doubt, and confusion. You gotta get rid of those in order to have a good stance and to strike true. Martial arts are great.
Yeah.
It does integrate, in my opinion, the spiritual, physical, and mental. But I will jump ahead to ghosts, spirits. Like I guess ghosts and spirits to me are different, completely different, because one had a body and one didn't have a body. But have you ever had any experiences with disembodied intelligences?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple different times.
If you care to share, if you don't have to, if it's like a little weird or whatever.
Well,
That's what we do on this channel. We talk about the stuff that's really weird.
I'll talk about two of them, I guess. One of them real quick. The second one's much weirder. The first one was when my uncle passed away. At this time it's been some time, so everyone's healed. But like, he had been sick, and the week before that, he actually passed. My coffee maker so he lives in Argentina. I live in Tampa, Florida. My coffee machine was just going off at the same time at every night, at like 12 something in the at night. And so it started freaking me out a little bit. It's like, why is my coffee machine doing this? And so the very last night, and I didn't know his status or anything like that, I unplugged it because I didn't want it to make any more noise. And I set up a candle, and I said, okay, thing that's making my coffee maker go off, light my candle kind of thing. Didn't light my candle, but the next day I found out that my uncle had passed. And then all of that stopped. So I feel like there was some connection there. And I told my parents about it and actually gave them a lot of comfort. The second one, this other one happened when I was 10. And that's when I first learned of the delusions of mankind. Was I was sitting in a very deep meditative trance, and just perfectly in front of me, an orb kind of opened up, and being held up its hands and like taught me the delusions of mankind. Like how we literally create everything we think, we create everything we see, every action we make. It's all a choice, and like we've created the different, that goes back to the line of sight, like all the different delusions people exist within. They're all creations of man, fractals of fractals upon fractals. And so now they're all trying to harmonize and synchronize to create a fluid experience. And that's the thing, is like we have all of our subconscious minds, and all that energy is drifting inwards to the physical realm. And so how's there ever going to be peace in the physical realm if our subconscious minds are also different to begin with too? So it all comes down to like a subconscious retraining to get the physical realm to be in peace too.
That makes sense. That's literally what I perceive as magic.
Yeah, a lot of people would use that, I mean, that is magic, right? So
Yeah,
like
everything is magic, everything. So we
yeah,
create everything.
That's what they say, like right, so like being able to use the other realms of creation, right? So when you're doing like a sigil, I think you're actually working with the denser realm. You're almost creating like your own little egregore of some sort.
I think you're just tapping into the energy that has been accepted for that process to create the effect ultimately. But what you believe is going to be what occurs. So I mean, there's always going to be, okay, I feel like every consciousness has its own equal amount of pull to all other consciousnesses. And you can train yours maybe to gain a little bit more strength. But if everyone thinks that the sky is blue, it's going to be blue, even if you want to think it's red. So if you go through these rituals that have been through time believed to have a specific effect, then it's probably going to have that effect because everyone's believed it will for so long. We're creating our reality.
Yep. I totally agree with that too. And there was even that one, I agree with that line of thought. We somewhat crystallize the universe around us. There's just fluid all around us, and we're crystallizing it with our projections. And so we have the overlapping of all human projections crystallizing a solid reality. And that there's even proof for that when it comes to those. I really wish I knew that doctor's name, but he like froze water, and he would put different.
And would talk to it different ways or whatever.
Right, and so you
I
get
can find that to link in the video.
But yeah, I mean, so based on the subconscious emotional energy being sent to the different cups, because they had different words like anger or love written onto them, they made different crystalline structures.
Which
And
is
so when you,
fantastic.
yeah, when you talk about like the physical realm around us solidifying at the
Yes.
time, Planck scale, million times in a second, just constantly bubbling. Yeah, we're solidifying the universe. In my opinion, we're
I
solidifying.
totally agree, 100%.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Did you hear about the rice part of that experiment, or maybe with a different experiment, but how they were talking to the rice differently? They ignored one, it went completely like rotten. They were mean to one, and it like spoiled. And the one they were nice to was like fermented into like wine or something.
That's awesome. No, I think I've seen that, but I don't have as good of a memory of, the water one stuck out to me more, the freezing of the water. Yeah.
It's just, this is what message I'm trying to get to you, universe. Even if no one ever sees this, we create our reality. You have to start creating nicer things. We have to be nice to each other.
Well, and that
Everyone's the same.
I talk about that a lot too. Like with every push is a pull, and with every pull is a push. And so yes, anyone can achieve any goal, but to what consequences?
Right.
Like, so that's where we need to realize that we're all on this together. And because I could do whatever I wanted, right? But like it would create consequences for my friends, for my families, for the people I care about. So it's important to understand, like with every push is a pull, and with every pull is a push. We all work in harmony.
Right. The collective has a lot of pull.
Yeah.
It can be dangerous to push against it. That's why we kind of have to like sway it slowly to the right direction.
Yep.
That's the
Definitely. Well, yeah, if you go too far off, then you've almost created your own fractal, right? That's completely separate of the other one.
Yeah.
And so how can you ever exist here if you're stuck so far here? So that's where I think
Madness comes in.
a lot of people call it like walking the fine line or walking the middle path or something of that nature. So I feel like that's always a good way to go. And being objective, like you mentioned earlier, is a healthy way to go about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
I
So
mean, like,
aliens.
sorry, go ahead. No,
I
I
was
was gonna like just say like, well, here's like
yeah,
your
please do.
Democrats, here are your Republicans. Walk that fine line. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. Very well
Right.
said.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, personally, like I said, conspiracy theorist, anybody in power is probably not trying to come out of power. I don't trust either party or anybody with that kind of power. If we were decent to each other and could just be accountable for our actions, we wouldn't need a governing body. We're ways off from that, I think, though.
I agree with that statement. I have a hard time. I don't do politics at all.
It's not
Yeah.
not good for us.
I think no, I talk about this with or I don't know if you've seen Artist and Tony.
Yeah. That's where
so
originally that's where I first seen you.
Yeah. So I mean we talk about this like there's a duty to creation, right? Like there's natural law, but then there's also like man-made laws that get thrown on top of that. And I think if people were to just follow natural law, you wouldn't need all those other ones.
Right. I also think that natural law requires responsibility that people aren't willing to take, though.
Because they have rights. And like what I mean by rights is because governments or like laws, societies have given them the right to do something that's completely wrong, like
Right.
in a spiritual
Absolutely.
sense.
Yes, no, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
So it's like almost like we're encouraged to be less. I
Well,
really
we
do.
are.
I do believe that that's a thing. Like I really do think that whatever forces are out there benefiting from our weakness, they don't want us to become strong.
Well, at this point in time, I mean, that's definitely the case because success is to own things. Success is to have, to make money and to do whatever. But like I was saying earlier, I can make money a lot of different ways, but a lot of those won't be right to my heart. They won't be right to other people I know. Like, so yeah, making money doesn't mean, in my opinion, making money isn't success. Owning materials isn't success.
But if you own the thoughts of the masses, you own the static universe we live in.
Right. And so I have a hard time with marketing. That's one of the reasons why like my work isn't as further along is because I got to a point. So I made these things called power band rings, and they go with a playing card game that involves it keeps going. So these power band rings, special powers in the card game. Okay. But I stopped making them when a lady came up to me and was like, I had more confidence because I was wearing the ring. So right then I was like, oh no, I shot her into a fractal of my delusion. Like I can't, in my opinion, in order to be true to myself, I can't be like using trickery to make sales, right?
Right, not for sales, correct, yeah.
Yeah. You get what I'm saying though. It's like, it's contradicting.
Magic, we use focuses to convince ourselves something is possible. So like magic wand or tarot cards, whatever you need to use, whatever trappings you need, like even a song or a dance, you're just really convincing yourself that you have the ability to affect creation.
They're tools. Yeah.
Tools, right, exactly. Yeah. So if the tool helps, let them have it.
No, I think you're right there too, and sometimes I might be hard on myself and things like that. Like I told my buddy the other day, like he's a marketing expert. He's like, marketing's needed though. It's like it's 100% needed. Like, don't get me wrong, you do need to market. Like in order to be successful in modern society, you need to market your products. If not, no one ever hears about them.
But I definitely agree with not ever compromising your morals to do that.
Totally. Yeah.
So I mean, unless you can see your morals in a different light, but I mean, so if somebody wants, maybe I missed the point of the story. My cat had walked out. And my cat rules my life. But if they feel good about having a physical trapping on, then if you provide them with that, it's not really a bad thing. You're still helping them ultimately find their way into the vortex that will make them grow.
I'd like to think so, but so at what point is that the case? And so then I always have my biased opinion. So is that just me like projecting a biased opinion, like, oh, I'm helping them by removing them from reality? I don't.
Does it make them more in sync with the truth? That three balanced structure you're talking about,
Right.
set in mind, body, and spirit in a healthy way.
You might be right. Like that. Like I said, like you mentioned, actually, always be objective. Yeah, you totally might be right. Like, and that's where I always take it to the extreme. So on that same scale, do some people need to have a Ferrari in order to?
If it makes them touch the universal oneness, then let them have their Ferrari as long as they don't hurt it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People will experience magic through whatever they're personally like related to. Like in astrology, the sun is your soul. It's what you see the lens you see the world through. So if you wanted to look at it like this game that I loved as a kid, Prime is all things. It's the essence and energy of all creation. But there are other spheres like matter or forces or spirit or mind that you kind of channel the prime thing through. So if the Ferrari is how they connect to the universal all, sure, that's fine with me. Get a Ferrari. Just literally don't crush people to get it. Some people won't need a Ferrari. Some people will go to a lake and find truth and find peace and connection to the universal oneness. But whatever path it takes, I mean, as long as they can get there, I support it. And I don't want to see anybody get hurt, any kids get hurt, like that's it. That's going the opposite direction from universal oneness. That is only serving yourself instead of the all.
I like how you just said that too. Like, yeah, I mean, if it helps you go, get it, but at the same time, be aware of how it affects other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or like what you're doing to everyone.
But it's hard. We're all the same person. Like all creation in my world is all the same. Ink pens, grass blades, we're all ultimately the same thing being expressed differently. So why hurt anything? Why mess up the stuff when we can all just peacefully find a way to exist together?
For sure. That's where I talk about the laminar versus the turbulent flows of that ultimate vortex, right? Because if you're connected to the faucet of creation, then you're existing within the laminar flow, and that's something everyone can be attached to. And that's where we all connect, but at the end of the day. But like if you're caught up in a fractal, now you're spiraling off into your own direction, and like it leads to disease ultimately, because you've like removed yourself from your perfect manifestation. So I think when I always try to like show the balance, like you were mentioning, like the balance, but how it also translates into health of the body, the health of the mind, health of your spirit.
That's really important. So from what you were saying, it kind of sounds like fractals are an individual perception of reality, or an individual like sideline to what is the ultimate truth.
I would say, yeah. I mean, that's a good way to put it. Like, because ultimately, if there is that one primary vortex, each one of our experiences, each one of our bodies is, a fractal of it. Our experience, our ability to perceive it.
That makes beautiful sense. Actually, have you ever read any of the Vedas or looked into any of that philosophy?
No.
Very interesting.
I've been contacted by a few cosmologists, like professionals, and they're like, wait, you don't study like Veda?
Yeah, you should just give it a chance when you have time someday. It's really similar. Okay, so the whole artificial intelligence like movement that's happening right now, and I'm assuming you have actually tried hallucinogens like DMT or ayahuasca or any of that. No, never.
I've in college, none of those two, but I've tried them before.
Okay. So yeah. I believe that everyone should do acid once, because I think it just opens you up to the universe. And shrooms have the same effect, I guess. But I feel like from my experiences with LSD, I feel like the AI art generator, at least, like what it's making is very similar visually to an acid trip, if that makes any sense. Do you have an opinion on any of that? You think it's part of consciousness, or is it something that's truly artificial?
Well, I mean, I think this is where I'm just going off what people have said. But based off of like DMT and stuff like that, they're able to see the fractality aspect, right? And I think that really does line up really well with what I talk about. Like right now we're currently in what I call the beta verse. Like you and I are in our normal beta state of consciousness, but when you're on a hallucinogen like that, your brain hits fast gamma.
I totally think that's fair.
Yeah, and so like that's, if you want to just think about radios, like a normal radio or TV, beta is 20 hertz. So you tune the channel to 20 hertz. 80 hertz is 4 times longer. So you actually as far as wavelengths, 4 times shorter. So you're actually tuning to a denser realm. And so when it comes to fractaling inward, yeah, I think the fractal nature of reality is like pretty clear in that way.
Okay. So I actually found out about your existence through the Arts and Tony video you guys were doing about UAP phenomena or whatever. And I personally believe that this whole UAP movement is going to lead to humanity finding a better understanding of consciousness, or this vortex that you speak of. And do you think that there's a connection there?
Oh, huge connection. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the, in quotes, the holy grail of science itself, of physics, of UAP, is understanding consciousness to begin with.
Yeah.
Like, what is consciousness? Right?
I mean, individualized fractions of that vortex, I guess, in a way, right? And that's how I perceive it from what you're saying to how I believe.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to even find the right word, because it's not space-time, it's not perception, it's, in my opinion, right, it's like the fundamental flows of creation that everything comes from. And so when you understand the physics behind that, then you're able to actually start making 5D technologies.
That's amazing. That's an amazing thought. So the Vedas are the same kind of thing. There's the ultimate consciousness, the one consciousness that everything else is conscious out of. It's very interesting. You definitely should look into that. I think you might find some serious parallels with the way you perceive the universe and the way that they did back then.
Yeah, I mean, this is all, like I said, it's come through like very vivid dreams since I was like 5 years old, you know. Yep.
It's just really awesome to hear and to see that you're actually making something that's perceivable by the human consciousness. Like, people don't like magic in the larger scheme of things, but you're making it science and it's still the same thing. So I really think that's awesome.
I was thinking about opening up some drawings. We could share, I could show the fractality the way I've drawn it out, at least. I don't know if you've seen the drawings that I've made, or
I don't know if I have.
All right, I'll open up a little set here.
I'm not sure how to let you screen share.
I'll be able to, I think.
Okay. I'm not real Zoom savvy.
I just want to find the right drawings, and then I'll do the screen share.
Excellent. Pretty
sure I know where they're at. So I'm only going to share 2 drawings, but I think it'll help people really understand the fractal nature. What we're talking about here.
While you're looking, do you remember any of your past lives?
I don't
believe in it at all, or
I don't know.
Yeah, it's fair.
I'm gonna have an objective opinion on that one. It's hard to say if it's just a wannabe memory of a past life, or if it's legitimate. Like,
it's fair.
Yeah, I'm
sure eventually we'll have a way to science it out. Astrology does, but I mean, most people don't consider it a science.
I mean, I talk about what is it? Past and future lives, and how when you have a proper interdimensional alignment, you actually can receive information from past and future lives.
Yes, I don't hear a lot of people talk about future lives like that, but I totally agree with you.
But like, for me, it's not a physical experience type memory. It's more of like a subconscious inherent memory. That is basically what I'm talking about here. I feel like everyone already knows all this stuff, and like, even when I speak, like, other people are like, have you ever read like you mentioned the law of one, but other people are talking about like Egyptian, like raw, philosophies. I'm like, no, I don't know any of that stuff.
But you do, ultimately.
We all do.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, I think it's embedded in our subconscious, and that we're taught not to trust so this is where I always say we're almost like kittens. Because a cat in the wild doesn't go up to another cat and meow for food. It goes and hunts and knows how to eat food through instinctual knowledge.
Right.
kittens in a home or cats in your house will just go to the owner and meow. So in a way, domesticated humans just work for money and they eat food.
That's
They
rough.
never actually, you know what I'm saying, right? It's like they never fully develop their instinctual knowledge.
I have to help my kitten real quick. Keep talking. I'm just gonna walk over here and let him into the house. Sorry.
Well, while you're doing that, I was going to grab my cat.
Hi, Buggy.
But-
He's spoiled rotten. What is your cat's name?
Little Meow.
Oh yeah, that's right. I love that. I love that. It's so cute.
Right now, it's playing on my skateboards over by the window. But one thing I wanted to bring up actually was you were talking about magic, right?
Mhm.
And I have a question because I don't know. I only know from my understanding, like, are magic squares a part of that?
Okay, so my perception of magic is literally that everything is magic. Magic is your ability to understand or recognize the connection between all things and therefore affect them. So I'm not real familiar with magic squares.
Okay.
But if you tell me what they are, I might be able to.
Well, it's a really simple way to show how you can have like a big square and there's fractals. I just tried to do the share screens, but it wouldn't work. It said host disabled share screening. I don't know though.
Yeah, I'll try to figure it out while you talk.
So basically, it's a way to show how you can basically have one. It's almost like a yin yang. So you have your perfect circle, and then the tops and bottoms cancel out to make a perfect. So out of nothing comes potentialities. And magic squares do the same thing, but as you fractal inward through the different dimensions. So instead of being like yin and yang, it's basically a square that's broken into 16 smaller squares. And so the one is the all, but each one of those little fractals it can be a different number.
Okay.
And so you get different numbers, and it all remains in harmony.
So
And
we
so-
would then I would say we're the little squares then, right?
That's a really easy way of putting it. Like each perception could be a little square of the greater all, for sure. In a
That's
in a
beautiful
philosophical sense,
way to put
yeah.
it. Let's see.
The reason I brought that up was because I thought sigil magic was founded off of magic squares, because I thought that they were using certain lines and
Mhm.
shapes that are based off of phonetics, and ultimately that has to do with like arcs of a toroid.
I wish that my friend Tyron was here because he's very well versed on metaphysics as far as like all the historical metaphysics. I sort of just live in a world where I don't follow anybody else's rules. I just sort of follow my own.
Well, I think that's the way to get the full understanding, because they might use different words that don't make as much sense. But when you have self-discovery, I think is when you truly understand something.
True. I totally agree with that. You got to find your own way to understand it, to control it, or whatever. Maybe it's experience.
This is an example of a magic square right here, but in a 3D printed model.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so like it all makes one big square. And if you were to add up the depths, so that like that's a 1. It's hard to see, but like this is a 1, it's really small.
Mhm.
On the other side, you have
Which is 9 to make it a 10 or whatever.
yeah, you got like a 2 and a 3. But like the point is that when you add up them in any line, horizontal, vertical, diagonal, it always adds to the same value. So the leftover outside is always the same number, but inside is created by fractals. And
That's
so here's
pretty
another
interesting.
version of that.
See, I guess I can see how you could put that with like sigil magic. I can't figure this thing out while I talk to you, so I apologize. But
Oh, don't worry about it.
Basically,
We
it's
can
like
do that next time. You know,
allowing space for the rest of the energy you're trying to bring in to be there. Like if you provide it with a 2 and you're looking for a 10, then the 8 would come to it, kind of, to make it equal.
yeah, I mean, that might be one way to think about it. I always just see it as like the fractality within a space. So like right now we're only experiencing, you could say, the beta waking universe, which would be the 20, as in the leftover space. But that's because we're existing at a certain distance. But you could zoom in to where now you're inside the 20, and the 20 is actually being made of a whole bunch of different numbers.
Okay.
So yeah, when I say 20, I mean like the beta harmonic
Right.
of consciousness. Yeah.
You would do it with divisional charts and Vedic astrology. So I think I'm following you. And very interesting.
Very cool.
So,
Yeah, I don't know much about astrology, but like at the end of the day, my last book goes into it because I relate it started in the book The Fifth Dimension, which is the 5th book in the series, and it talks about the human circadian rhythm.
Mhm.
And if you map out, so each one of our brain harmonics is tuned to a very specific size. Delta is like the biggest waves of creation. Theta is more inward, alpha, beta, and they fractal inward, and they're all 1/4 the diameter because it's all energy that's being
Yeah.
manifested from a black hole.
okay.
So it's
That's perfect.
but so when you map out the circadian rhythm, it makes a pattern. where it's like a big loop and a tight loop and a big loop and a tight loop. But then it's like, what's the age of Aquarius? What does that really mean when it comes to like spiritual energy and all this stuff? And so then I really, like through self-discovery, you could say I come across the yugas of the precessional cycle, which is a Hindi concept. Do you know what I'm talking about there?
I'm familiar with the term, but not familiar with the concept.
Well, basically, it shows that as the Earth does its 25,920-year precessional cycle, that humans also go through a cycle. So there's like what they call the Kali Yugas, and that's like when humans are at their least spiritually developed state.
Yes, I remember you speaking about this in your last video.
Yeah, versus like the Sat Yugas, where we're at our most advanced state. And the last time we were at the Sat Yugas in the cycle, because it's a 25,920-year cycle, so 12,000 years ago, we built structures like the Sphinx. We built all these megalithic structures, and we were like more in harmony with the universe itself. But then we drift back away because it's just night and day for the Earth itself. And so we drift back away from the Sat Yugas and we go back through them, Tetra, Dwapara, Kali. Right now, we're actually in a transferage from Dwapara into Tetra, which is the same, which is like Earth consciousness, right? And so right now we're actually, if you wanted to compare that to the circadian rhythm, it's like the transition from going from a theta state of brain harmony, meaning dreaming, to the awake alpha state. So you could call that the theta to the alpha, or you could say it's Dwapara into Tetra, or from Pisces into Aquarius, or in the law of one, yellow ray energy center into the green ray energy center. And so it's all the same thing. It's a jump into the next vibration of Earth harmony.
And eventually we'll have to go back down.
But eventually we go back down, and that happens in about 6,000 years. And so what's also interesting is how Graham Hancock recently came out with the cataclysm cycles in the Netflix series. And those cataclysms relate directly to the transfers from one energy. In my opinion, they relate directly.
That's fantastic.
So, I mean, it basically shows the cataclysm cycle, but also in relationship to human perception cycle, Earth harmonies. And that has a lot to do with the Earth drifting through the galactic plane as well in a physical sense. So in a physical sense, it has to do with like the Earth going up and down through. So this is like the galactic plane of our galaxy. The Earth and Sun do that over long periods of time. And so when the Earth crosses through that galactic plane, you see cataclysms, but you also see shifts in human awareness.
I wonder if every time we hit the starting point again, if we're going to be in a different like range of that energy, like hopefully
I think
higher.
so. I think so, because it's always that entire system itself is constantly drifting inward still.
True.
And there's always, in my opinion, from my understanding, there's always an inward drifting. So like, even if we do go back to that same spot, we're going to be slightly more inward.
Because it's a black hole theory of everything being sucked towards it.
Exactly.
I've always looked at the all as outward, and you're really making me think that it's definitely going to be inward when we finally hit that 0 point consciousness together, as humanity or whatever. It's definitely inward. I see your reasoning.
Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think in a physical sense, it's outward and inward.
Sure, physical sense.
Yeah, we sense a specific layer within that, and that's why I say we're in a relative layer of a black hole. And it's because if you look out to the edge of the smooth cosmic microwave background, that flow of space-time is traveling at the speed of light, and we can't see it because it's going the speed of light. When you look into black holes, well, that's another flow of space-time, but instead of traveling outward at the speed of light, it's traveling inward at the speed of light. So we're seeing a very distinct layer within a black hole. One time the speed of light outward, one time the speed of light inward. And it's all relative to our inertial reference frame, meaning like our position within the universe itself. Yeah. And so what's going on now is that we're drifting closer to the center of all time. And that's where there's denser vibrations. But like you said, we're also going to be eventually drifting back away.
Right.
So for the next like 6,000 or 7,000 years, we're drifting inward. Yeah.
So very, everything goes up, goes down. The Wheel of Fortune is what I was trying to think of. It'll ultimately always keep moving, and that's good. I would like to think that someday we could get past being mean to each other and murdering whatever, but I guess it is what it is. The cycle will continue.
Well, and that's where it circles back to the star seeds or seed crystals.
Yeah.
Because the idea of that is to help recrystallize the structure. Because when the structure, meaning the collective human consciousness, gets very grainy, now it's almost impossible to have harmony because there's so many different grains of
rubbing against each other, kind of.
Yeah, and they all create friction. If you want to just think of it all as a fluid and smooth flows of creation, like this little grain itself is its own vortice. This little grain is a vortice, and when they touch each other, they create friction. And so for everyone to actually be able to communicate and have harmony, like we can all be in harmony if no one ever talks to each other, but I would say that's not really a successful.
That's probably true.
You know what I'm
Still
saying?
separating.
Right. No. So like so the way to do it is to recrystallize the structure. From my understanding, that's like what the star seeds or the seed crystals do. They come in, they help melt perceptions, they help
Yep.
recrystallize.
Change the vibrational frequency or pattern.
Yeah.
You're a very intelligent person. I can't believe you've never extensively studied magic.
Well, that's where others would say that that's all I've studied since I was 5. Like,
Yeah, I mean that's reasonable.
I've been like, I try not to define things, and like, I guess maybe it is considered magic for most people, but like, I've just been studying through my meditations and through my dreams. And so if you learn to lucid dream, I don't know if you do that,
When I
but
was
yeah.
a kid, I learned it, but then I had some issues because my dreams come true sometimes. But yes, lucid dreaming definitely know the system.
Yeah, so the ability to lucid dream itself, and this is something actually that Dan Winter says, translates directly back to your ability to pass information from past and future lives. And that's what he calls the soul and things of that nature. And that all of that ability to be able to lucid dream is to be able to pack properly when you drift back out. We just talked about that inward and outward drifting.
Mhm.
Not only does that happen on its
Oh,
own,
okay.
so when you go into a lucid dream, you're going back out into your dream state, right? So you need to have that energy properly harmonized into dream state. And if you're holding on to a lot of ego, like postures of I am this or I am that, or I need to do this or that,
Mhm.
it's going to be pulling you off center. And so your conscious mind shuts off. You still dream, but you're not really consciously aware of it. And that's where I think the subconscious interactions within those types of dreams are geared to guiding you back to the laminar flow. And I think that has a lot to do with why sleep is so rejuvenating as well.
You don't have some concept of ego though, and of course I don't mean like, but yeah, no, the I am this. Then how can you even effectively lucid dream because you would be without self? But I would just there is some value in knowing that you exist as an individual because otherwise you're not really benefiting the all by contributing yourself to it.
I'm going to think about that.
So what's the point of existing at all if we don't keep some of our experience like but make the experience aware that it's part of the overall unity?
Well, I think that has a lot to do with ascension of the individual soul's consciousness. And that might seem silly, but I feel like we become super disconnected from the all at times.
That's the whole, yeah, yes.
And so like at the end of the day, like the experiences we have through our lives somewhat pace us back to that center point. And so
totally like, Vedic philosophy, completely like word for word, Vedic philosophy.
Well, so at the end of the day, I mean, like the experiences we have ultimately guide us to be a more harmonized version of ourself. And that's the type of information I was mentioning that actually, from my understanding, that's the information that transfers through to the next life. It's that subconscious like knowing of your spirit, you know. Yeah.
That's really cool. Theoretically, I guess for the Vedic philosophy is we fractal off of the all consciousness in order to find our way back to it. The actual experience of finding ourselves again is the whole point.
And it re-solidifies. Not only do you go back to the all, but you have a better
the experiences
understanding.
You carried with you from the being alive, and you take that back, and that makes perfect sense. And then maybe eventually we'll get out of the going backwards phase and just all live in infinite crazy land.
Well, I think that's where we already do, and that's where the true freedom needs to comes into the whole thing. The very first show I did with Artisan, he's like, well, what do you mean, you know, you're going to get in trouble? Well, it's because I talk about true freedom, meaning like the ability to not get sucked into one of those vortices to begin with. And so at this time, kids, you know, kids are born into these cultures, and like they're shown all these things to strive for that aren't really true to the natural flows of creation.
Just giving them form they don't need.
Right. Yeah, no, they're taught to make money and they're good. And like money's one aspect of it. It's good to have finances so you can pay for stuff, but I think it's important to be developing your spirit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would definitely have chosen the path of spirit over money.
I have at this point.
Yeah, it seems like I can't even imagine choosing any other way. I mean, money's only limited to this one part of reality. There's infinite realities that we can interact with if we just learn to try.
That's what I always thought was funny is people do all this stuff to collect these things while they're alive, but it's like the life is actually a really short It's a really short in comparison to in comparison to your entire creation. Where it's more important, in my opinion, to be developing your spirit, you know?
Are you familiar with the Akashic record, the concept of the Akashic record?
Yeah, like a collective consciousness or stored information kind of thing that
All
exists.
things that have ever happened or ever will.
Yeah.
Kind of like Google for, space time or something.
I've always called that the universal consciousness.
Yes,
Or like
absolutely.
it's the same thing though.
The tapestry is one way I would look at it, but it's accessible at any point from any time.
Say that again. Sorry.
I feel like it's always accessible. Like we can really contact any point that has ever existed or ever will if we just allow ourselves to be able to perceive it.
I think so. But one thing that I've that comes to mind too is like because I've talked about this before, like where you can I can see through the Akashic record, you can learn to explore the past, explore the future, and like but it might not be the exact past or future that your experience went through.
Absolutely.
And the reason I say that is because there's like erosion. Like
oh my gosh, yes, you are a genius.
Our creation's like a river flowing inward. And so you can go back and look at what the river looks like when you were there to experience it, but that doesn't mean that
the bank's going to be a little farther away, or the water level will be a little more high.
The water level could be higher because maybe it rained more, or like maybe so you see what I'm saying? Like just through natural cycles, the river is still the same river. It's still taking the same path, but there's different little vortices that exist in it.
Yes, I totally agree. I think truth is, always changing. The actual true reality is always, moving a little bit.
I think so. I think it's
the most exciting thing.
Yeah. That's why, like, when people say you can predict the future, I'm like, no. I have a 99% potential of what might happen, because people
50-50.
At the end of the day, it happens or it doesn't.
Right.
So it is 50-50. Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah, people always say, like, what are the odds on that happening? And my like gut answer is always like 50-50.
Because it's going to be either it will or it won't. Bottom line.
It's 50-50.
So timeline shifting, have you ever heard of that?
What do you maybe?
I know it's weird, the words are infinite possibility, but I feel like there is possibly something that occurs where part of one experience of reality and part of another one come together for whatever reason, and then everybody's a little different. Like I only remember one moon landing, and I know it sounds like Mandela effect, and maybe it is. I only remember one, and maybe they've changed the narrative, and so I just didn't notice it was changing over time. Or maybe me and then anyone else whose consciousness came from that line came onto a line where there's more people, so more powerful paradigm or more powerful defining consciousness, where there was 3 or something. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I don't know about that necessarily, but like I totally see what you're saying. The way I see it more is like you have this laminar flow of your creation, right? And so the easy way to say it is there's 16 versions of me right now existing in different dimensions, but there's one that would be the greatest version of myself, which is most centered.
I don't think that one exists in any dimension. I think that one exists outside of it, just for the record.
Say that one more time.
I think that one ultimate you would be outside of the 16.
Well, it would be above the 16 before it has fractaled off into the other potentialities.
Gotcha.
And like that's where the closer you get to that perfect the version of yourself that exists in all dimensions, the more you can actually see all the different paths of those different beings that exist within the denser creations of yourself.
You have so much information for the magical community and for the scientific community. Like you're like a point of convergence for the whole to figure out why they're the same. I don't know. I really appreciate that you exist. Thank you for coming into this life and doing the thing.
I'm doing what I do, but yeah, no, thank you for what you're doing too. I mean, I wouldn't be able to speak if you didn't ask me to.
Of course. You need observers in order to be observed. Do you think that you've had a rough path through life? Because I know that I wanted to ask you that regarding the direct nodes and the direct planets.
So, okay, I wanted to answer that too. I think it could have been much easier if I never questioned anything.
But then what would you have learned?
I would have done my purpose without learning as much. So that's where it's like when you're in that laminar flow of creation, life is a breeze and every single thought manifests almost, and life is a dream, and you don't have anything to worry about. But then at a certain point, it's like, do I have free will? Does free will exist if this natural faucet of creation is constantly taking to the future? So it's almost like that's where I tried to explain this in the past, but I don't know if I express it properly. there's limitations to spiritual potential. I've played with my ego so much to the point where it's like, okay, go with the flow, don't go with the flow, see what happens. I've almost like scientifically experimented with my own ego in a way, in that sense.
That's excellent.
Yeah, so like in my opinion, you have free will at this point in time, but you can only spiral so far because like, so here's a faucet of water coming straight
Very
down.
wise.
If I come over here and I try to push against that faucet, ultimately I'm going to start spiraling into a tight, turbulent flow of creation where I like, what does that mean? It means I'll become very doubtful. I'll become very pacey. I'll become very this, and that. And it naturally drifts me back to that center point. And so that's what I call the spirit potentials. Like they're walls of potentiality that exist. And so life is
It's your nodal axis, just astrologically, that's what that is.
there you go. So like what I've learned now is I like being at my nodal point. Like I don't like being off-centered.
No,
Yeah,
you don't want to be pushed back onto the path. It hurts.
it hurts, but then and so that's where you really truly learn those lessons, because with every push is a pull and how it distorts the people around you. So now if you're in this constant node and you've been like a solid foundation and you choose to step away from it, you're really going to disrupt a lot of other actions in life,
Very
right?
true. Very true. That's very
So
wise.
that's the most challenging thing, is like, because if you see what you're supposed to do, or if you think you know what you're supposed to do, and you go and you make it easy and you do it, then that's what you're supposed to do. But then at the end of the day, do I have free will? Is my life really mine, or am I just subject to this greater flow?
Right. I think we have the option to react to the events that are destined. So like this is going to happen, but you have the choice to react, and then that decides whether you're going to walk off that path or on it. I don't know. The more I get into astrology, the more I study, the less I think I have free will.
Well, that's where I'm at now, is like, we have free will, but like every bad choice you make will ultimately make you spiral back towards that right choice.
Ultimately, you're right. No matter, but then it's the experience you're going to have in this life could be less crappy if you don't just walk away or you know, stay on your path. But I feel like we do gain a lot of experience from learning what we're not supposed to do.
Yep, I probably shouldn't say, but there's like a funny meme that's out there. It's like, mess around, find out.
Yeah, right.
Say
Exactly. That's very true. And I think maybe that when we go through these off the path experiences and we kind of suffer, we learn that we don't want other people to feel that way.
Yes, and that's one thing I've heard too, is like that it's hard to develop the empathy of understanding the importance of togetherness until you've been separated. At that point, you understand the importance of like always being connected.
Laura Eisenhower is an astrologer. I'm Dwight Eisenhower's great granddaughter, but she said you have to feel it to heal it.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, and so like, how can you ever be, and so now if you have this mission, right, this is my life mission to like be able to connect to people, it's impossible to connect to someone if I haven't felt their greatest trauma.
Yeah. Because then there's not really something where you can reflect off of them. I feel like love is seeing the divine all in somebody else that is yours reflected back at you. And I know that sounds like crazy. I don't even know if it makes sense in human words, but you have to be able to see the truth that is the all in other people. And if you don't have that truth in you, then how will you ever connect with them?
Yep, totally. And I describe that in the book, The Physics of Love, Synchronicity.
I'm gonna have to get a library dedicated to you.
No, it's a short book. It's like 45 pages, but it talks about spirals of creation. And if you want to truly be able to jump into someone's like fractal of creation in order to help heal them, you have to like be able to go with that flow and understand it in all aspects. So it's, when it comes to being a healer, the more experiences you have in that sense, then the better you can do.
That's very true. Martial arts. Okay, so you bust your knee a couple times, you're gonna learn how to wrap up a knee really well. You can wrap up somebody else's knee and they'll be fine. You know what I mean?
You also learn to not put your knees on the ground, like when you're doing a takedown.
Very true. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever trained with nunchucks. This is totally off topic, but back of the elbow, side of the knee, all day.
It's not that off topic, right?
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought that there was weapons behind you, but I'm like, you're probably just perceiving that wrong because my own fractal is so like weapon oriented.
This is a sword I made.
That's incredible. You made it?
Yeah, out of stainless steel.
Very cool. Very cool.
I made all my training tools. I find that I call them training tools, similar to like how in Magik, you like you were talking about, you have tools.
Focus, yeah. Weapons are completely focused for magic. Physical magic exists, like monks and kung fu.
Yep.
Amazing.
So training tools, right? Like you need to learn how to, and nunchucks are great because it's a very flowy tool, like you just mentioned, if you're not flowing properly,
Yeah,
you're
if you
gonna
get a
hit
little bit
elbow.
off the edge, you're gonna whack yourself good.
Yeah, I like nunchucks, and that circles it back to the concept of walking the fine line, being
Yes,
walk the line,
good
because
expression of that.
one of the, I've mentioned before, like I get a lot of my lessons in my dreams, and so then I wake up and actually do them in real life. And one of them was walking a pier to the end of the pier and back, but on the handrail. So like it's a 20-minute walk total when you do that. And I had double nunchucks. And so one wrong step, you fall off the
Yeah,
pier. One wrong motion with your nunchuck, it's flying in the water.
yeah.
And so it's really walking that fine line of the perfect balance. I did that for about 9 months every morning. Yep.
You're a really cool human. Totally awesome. I just, yeah, that's, I don't know if anybody who hasn't used the weapon would be able to understand how important every single tiny bit of your motion is in that analogy. Like
Yep.
both nunchucks are going to be sucking you out, or the velocity plus the tiny little line you're walking on. It's just, that's a lot, and that's really really cool. I'm gonna have to check your chart back for like anything that would indicate Libra energy, or maybe it'll show me a more true expression of balance, because I see that balance is definitely something you came into to spread to the world.
I think balance is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the greatest challenges, and I don't think many people understand that, is being able to balance all the different energies that exist within the body. And so like when, especially when you start to like get, you could say taller in quotes, like the taller you get, the you better have good balance.
Oh
Like
yeah, for sure, for sure. Yep,
yeah,
that makes
no.
sense.
So like and so there's the balance, right? So if you push real hard and like say you could say a strength sort of foundation, martial arts, punching, kicking, breaking boards, it's good to also pace back and push really hard in the, you could say, creative musical side, right? Because now you have this weight that, so here's your tree perfectly centered. You have this huge weight over
Right.
here. You need to balance that weight.
Yeah.
And so that way you can actually grow in all aspects, in all dimensions.
And then your roots are going to spread out the same distance.
Yep. And to have that really good foundation, that really proper rooting is really important. And that's why I also mentioned, like, before you start any new creative activity or anything, get back to your center, get in all aspects, right? Like your best martial arts stance, also your best mental stance, your best spiritual stance. And now that will last for the rest of your life, because it's truly coming from you and not like a fractal of someone else's fractal, or a fractal of an instilled delusion,
We're almost out of time, so I think that was the most perfect spot to cut this off at. I just want to thank you infinitely for your time. And as I continue to watch your videos, and apparently going to have to read all your books, I will have more questions, and hopefully you'll come back and help us all understand how to find that balance.
Right on. And just for the viewers and for yourself even too, I have them. I've now recently just released all of the books on YouTube, and I put like visuals behind them, right? So I read every single book word for word. I've broken it into 27 videos. The average is about 20 minutes long. Some are about 30, some are 10. The average is 20 minutes, and they are for free, on my YouTube. So
That's fantastic. I'll put a link in this video description to help them find your channel. There's 27 nodes of the moon, by the way.
That's interesting. I used 27 because it broke up 9 very nicely and still equaled 9 at the end. 9's my number.
I won't pump gas at a number that's not divisible by 3. So I get
it. So 9's good. 3 squared, right? We're good.
For sure. I'm down with 9. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, and yeah, have a great night.